In this GYDA Talks, Robert interviews Dixon Jones. Dixon is an award-winning entrepreneur who has helped build the internet marketing industry for over 20 years. He is currently an investor and CEO of InLinks, which is the first Entity SEO toolset built from the ground up around its own knowledge graphs and NLP algorithms. He is best known in the industry for building up Majestic, the link intelligence search engine. Robert and Dixon discuss what Dixon is up to right now, a startup in the middle of the recession, what is the upside, how to get traction, and fortune favours those who turn up, plus much more.
Hello and welcome to the GYDA Talks, the Grow Your Digital Agency Talks. And today, delighted to have who we could describe as a legend in his own lifetime, Dixon Jones. Hello, Dixon.
Hello, you could describe me as a legend in your own lifetime, but I think that would be really rather pushing it, Robert, but thank you for the compliment.
No, I think we can. I think we can call you a legend, and people know who you are. They know, if they don't know, I mean, for those few people who don't know who Dixon is, would you like to just give us a bit of a background?
Sure. So I started in SEO in 1999. I set up I founded an agency in 1999 called Receptional, which I no longer am involved in. But I'm really started getting known when I became marketing director of a little startup called majestic.com, which has one of the largest indexes of the internet, frankly, and really is primarily a backlink analysis tool, and also now has a social media influencer tool as well. I pulled back from there mostly a few years ago, but my wife wanted me to buy a nice big posh house on the edge of the village, which we haven't yet got. So I had to start another business. I went into bed with a French guy called Fred Laurent, who has really worked hard on the semantic web and InLinks.net is a tool that we've now got out, which really is a SEO technology from which is built from the ground up around semantic SEO or entity SEO, and so I'm working on that as CEO of that, and hopefully I'll have as much success with that as I've had with anything. Let's hope.
Well, so entity SEO. So I mean, I guess the question is. Is this the universal antidote to all problems SEO? I mean, let's just get some sense of where entity SEO fits into the hierarchy.
Okay. Well, I think it's the thing is, firstly, people get scared with when they hear a new kind of phrase and assume that it's just another SEO spin on an idea, and people can't and SEOs are trying to obfuscate, for want of a better word, and try and put snake oil out there, and I think that's not true. We can either answer that question by going from the research down, and things like BERT and the way in which Google has changed its way of indexing and understanding and its information retrieval, or we can go from the way Google are talking about the concept of things not strings, which is the idea really of saying that an entity is a topic. So rather than indexing the world's information around web pages, it's easier in the back end for them to start indexing the world around concepts and ideas. So for want of a better word, call that a Wikipedia entry or an encyclopedia entry, basically. So a company becomes big enough to be called an entity in its own right, but also a concept is an entity. So you could have a concept of a book, or the concept of reading, so there's different ideas that are all entities, and so you can there's a lot less entities in the world than there are web pages in the world. So there's so many web pages in the world that if you want to try and get the answer to the question, how many geese typically fly in a flock, then there's a million different, there's so many different web pages that are out there. But if you've got the concept of geese and then you've got everything about geese, then the information's in the geese category or entity. So that's the kind of idea that I try and put out there. That's where I try and explain it. And I think people can get it that way. You know, if you think about the knowledge graph or Google is trying to build a graph of ideas and concepts, and a concept is just something that you would see in an old style Wikipedia encyclopedia, then basically you're in a pretty good place to try and understand entities. And therefore, once you've started understanding that that's the way we're going, that changes the way that you look at SEO, or should do, because the old way of SEO was very different.
And is your thinking that if SEO specialist SEO agencies use your product, they will be able to deliver better SEO to their clients? Or are you thinking that clients should be talking about entity SEO?
I think, firstly, you don't have to use our product to think in terms of entity SEO. You could work in spreadsheets. You could sit there and say, right, I want to talk about, I want to be number one for geese. I've got a geese on my screensaver over there, so hence the geese analogy. I wasn't pre-planned. So you can sit there and say, right, okay, I want to be the number one site for geese, or Canadian geese they are actually. So therefore, what do I need to know about? What do I need to write about and think about those topics? And you can then have a look at what the best of breed are writing about and make sure you cover that information. Have a look at what's already made Wikipedia. Open your old encyclopedia on geese and find some novel stuff that isn't on the internet as well. And you can start working that way, rather than saying Canadian geese, Canadian geese, Canadian geese, Canadian geese, and just repeating those words. So you don't need a tool like Inlinks. However, Inlinks is able to very quickly extract all of those entities out of a corpus of data, whether it's your own site or whether it's any other set of web pages. It can pull that together very, very quickly. And that's really where it starts to be quite useful, because all of a sudden you've got this content brief in front of you that says, you want to talk about Canadian geese? Well, you better talk about wings, and you better talk about migration, and you better talk about Canada and Northern Hemisphere, and all these kind of things. So it just does a lot of that lifting for you, and then it does some other fancy things like linking all the mentions of Canadian geese. If you've got a whole website about birds, then you've probably mentioned Canadian geese, in 4 or 5 different places. Well, Google doesn't know which one to put forward there. So then you can link everything together and say, right, this is a page about Canadian geese. It can write underlying schema and inject it into your web page that says, Mr. Search Engine, in case there's more than one, this page is about the concept of Canadian geese. It also mentions the concept of migration and the concept of the Northern Hemisphere and stuff, but these are secondary to the concept of geese. And then all the other pages, then when they're talking about Canadian geese, link through to the Canadian geese page, so that if you're a user, you're going through the website and you're seeing that you're talking about, what kind of bird is this? And you've got a picture and it connects to the Canadian geese, and the link goes straight to the Canadian geese page. So it's good for the user, and it's making it easier for a search engine that is thinking in terms of entities and things to know what page is about what.
So if we were, as we have been known to, were falling out of a bar at Brighton SEO or whatever it is at 12 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, do you remember those days?
Yes, or something on a roof garden somewhere in South London. Yeah.
That I'll just have one more before I go conversation. I would say to you, start up in the middle of possibly the worst recession. Is that really a clever thing to do? What's the upside of it? What's the downside?
So I've set up and run more than 4, but let's say 4 material businesses that have taken up all of my life and my times and stuff over the years. The first one was a murder mystery company straight after Maggie Thatcher's rise to power, and there were 3 million people unemployed or something like that. It was supposedly a bad time to set up a business. So that was a great time to set up a business. Reception was 1999. I set that up. So the world was doing okay then. But Majestic was started pretty much right at the banking crisis. So that was pretty much a bad time as well. So, I think that recessions are the best time to set up a business for two reasons. One, it's usually for most people, unfortunately, that's done out of circumstance. So you find yourself in a place where you've got to get up off your backside and use your talent, put your talents to work. I don't think that's a great reason to set up a business. I think you've got to want to do it, but I do think it's a great time to set up bootstrapped businesses, ones that are able to just think about the bottom line from the start. And in the good times, there seems to be, oh, here's 50 million quid, or here's $1 million quid, or here's a lot of money. And for a person that's never run a business before, that's so tempting to go and buy the bigger computer, or the company car, or the whatever. And unless you follow a business plan and a process, you're going to basically run out of money and fall over a cliff. But in a recession, you're sitting there and thinking about it. People are less willing to give you money, probably. Although it's weird in this one, people seem to have money. In fact, they just seem to be making it all around the world. Oh, we haven't got any money. Let's just quantitative easing, no problem. I don't know. I'm trying to read The Economist to work that one out. Anyway, I think it's a great time to set up a business. I think it's the best time to set up a business.
It's the magic money tree that they couldn't find earlier on.
Yeah, well, it's incredible, really, isn't it? And you'd expect, everything I was taught meant that inflation now should go through the roof, but that doesn't seem to be happening. So so people's belief in the concept of money is quite ingrained, isn't it? Oh, we'll just double the amount of money in there, and everyone go, okay, fine.
It is. I mean, it is really bizarre that the whole way people. Anyhow, just going back to business. So startup, recession, bootstrapped. It doesn't sound like anyone's given you £10 million just for startup costs. No, and I mean the only one that I was able to put money into this business, so that was great. But the only one that had startup money was Majestic. But looking back on it, it wasn't a huge amount of money.